Hey cutesy, let's continue our episodes here. Before we get into it, I have to apologize for the sound. It's very hot here in Germany. We're having another heat wave. It's like this heat wave stuff is just becoming very long. And there's no central AC, so I resort to portable AC units. And I need to sit next to one, otherwise this place feels really like a sauna. So we'll have to deal with the noise, and I apologize for that. If you have any questions or anything was not clear, please write to me, let me know, and make sure to let me know if you need me to review something or go over something. And I'm also happy to answer in writing if that's easier. So anyway, let's go forward and let's talk about let me talk to you about, see the heat's already getting to my head, about what we're covering today. Today we're talking about unfinished business and why it's so important to deal with it now versus later. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so the unfinished business, I've kind of touched on this a little bit sometimes on my other social media venue areas like Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. But I do want to go into it a little bit more today because not only just with what I have read and researched, it's more of what I have seen. And I know that's anecdotal evidence, but it's what I have seen happens when people don't deal with their stuff. And I learned so much. So what I would see sometimes at the bedside, whether I was just at the bedside as a nurse or at the bedside, say, as my later director role, where I would go and either do some quality checks out in the field and or also assess complex cases out in the field and see what else we needed to do. And there were often these cases where the term terminal agitation was used. And that's a type of agitation that happens right in the terminal stages when someone's dying. This agitation is very interesting to see. It can be hard to see too, because the person usually is not really coherent. They're kind of in between sleeping periods. They're not really there. So, sometimes when someone's agitated, just kind of in day-to-day life, if they're awake and alert, you're able to sometimes talk with them and get a response from them. In this terminal agitation state, because somebody is terminal and they're dying, you don't have that usually. And if they are responding to you, it could just be some mumbling, some whispering, really embedded with a lot of confusion. And what you really see, though, is you see this sense of just restlessness that cannot be quelled. And it can sometimes take a decent amount of interventions, not just medications, but other too, to really address this. And it's important that I tell you and that you listen about what the other interventions are, because it's key here. Sometimes the terminal agitation is so severe that we have to resort to an intervention called palliative sedation, which is palliative meaning managing symptoms, sedation means where you're sedating somebody for the purpose of trying to get them calmer and trying to get them more comfortable because they simply are not responding to the current, care delivery that is being done. This is a much more, I would say, a much more extreme type of example, because usually with the medications that you deal with, especially in hospice, even at home, you have access to these medications and they can be very helpful to really calm these and really manage these symptoms. But in palliative sedation, you're using much stronger medications over a period of time, even going to continuous types of delivery models, so like a drip or something like that. I say all this and I share this because the running theme with all these, when I looking at these cases, whether at the time or before or after these happened, we learned, through our assessments even early on, that these people carried with them something, and it could have been something that they just were not able to or hadn't yet really processed. So it can be example, they haven't forgiven somebody yet, or they feel like they need to forgive themselves for something, or they're carrying around this a lot of pain for what they did years ago or even recently, how they have this estranged child, the post-traumatic type of conditions from, say, being in war, being in combat, we worked with a lot of patients who were in, say, the Holocaust, other people who also maybe worked as police officers and dealt with trauma, say at work, or patients who have traveled abroad and seen terrible things, or just lived in terrible type of experiences, whatever that is. When trauma and these types of really serious things happen to a person, and I'm not here as a counselor, I never pretend to be, but I also learned also from personal experience, this really creates a certain type of impact on your nervous system. And depending on what is around you at the time of the event, whether you were supported or not, whether you were held or not, whatever it was, that is really going to determine how the trauma response happens and occurs in your body. This is a topic for someone who is really an appropriate person to discuss it. I'm really touching on it, but I'm able to say that in this case, these things in your nervous system are there in your nervous system. And if you don't deal with it, at some point they come out. In the dying process, your physical reserves start to weaken and weaken. And so maybe your whole life, if you didn't delve deep and go into your healing, say for some trauma or whatever it was, you develop these coping mechanisms. And by you, I also mean me, because, you have to learn how to survive. And so you deal with these coping mechanisms and develop certain coping mechanisms. They may not be quite healthy, to get on with day-to-day life, right? You have to get on with it. And so you develop these things just to get on with it. But when you're at the end of life, these things go away because they weaken so much. They weaken so much to the point where they're so weak that your stuff that you haven't dealt with comes up, and it can manifest in this type of agitation. I am oversimplifying it for purposes of just digestibility here. And also, again, because I'm not a licensed therapist, I'm a licensed nurse, but a nurse that has worked in hospice and palliative care and, has done this for over 20 years. So I want to make this clear. So when you don't deal with your stuff, it does come up, especially at the end of life. And it's really hard to treat in many cases, to the point where you have to do these interventions. And it's really important here that you know that when the time comes for you to die or a loved one dies, that it can be an amazing experience, it can be a fulfilling one, and it can be a comfortable one. And not only that, but you need that also not just to die well, but you need that also to live well. Because when we are living in a place where we're so afraid of death, we avoid doing the stuff that we need to address the stuff that death brings up. And all the things that come to the surface when we're looking at death, and all the things that are related to it, like how we spend our time, any unfinished business that we really want to deal with, any of that kind of stuff. So all this to say is, if you can deal with your stuff now with the best appropriate licensed personnel, that's best. If resources are a challenge, find stuff online. If you're seeing this, that means you have some access to a computer or phone. Find resources online where you can connect with other people, say, or support groups or something. I discourage things like the AI stuff, ChatGPT, Claude AI, all those things. While I know some people may use them for other things, for doing therapeutic type of things, you really need to use the right licensed personnel for that, or the appropriate support group as much as possible. So please take care of this unfinished business. It may take you a while. It certainly has been for me, for my post-traumatic stress stuff. But it has really changed my life in a way that I have changed in a way that I really appreciate and that I really like. And I know there's much more to do. I'm willing to do it, but I know I've become healthier for it. I know that I've learned so much, obviously, but I know that my life is better because of it. And you deserve a good death. I always say you deserve a good death, but you also really deserve a good life. So this is not just for your end of life, your deathbed, because enough is going on there already. You have enough to do. You don't need more complications from your past stuff that you haven't dealt with, okay? You have enough going on in the dying process, but you also really deserve to live well. You deserve to have a good life, and a life that's fulfilling, and a life that's going to have meaning for you. So please deal with your unfinished stuff now as much as possible. If you are looking for specific resources in your area and need help with that, let me know. Okay? All right, I love you. Let's continue to normalize these conversations and education about death and dying so we die better at end of life, and hope you live a good one till we get there. I will talk to you soon. Take care.